Immigration and the NHS dominate the general election with 1 month to go. After the verdict of voters in the local elections, the party leaders are back on the campaign trail.
We do want to bring net migration down to sustainable levels. We believe that is the tens of thousands.
We would stop the intensive advertising of unhealthy fast foods on television aimed at our children.
I'm live in Hartlepool on the challenge facing politicians in election 2017.
If you're going to make promises, keep them. Just as simple as that. Don't say things and then take them away when you get elected.
Also tonight, preparing to be president, France's new leader on the challenge ahead. England's most successful female footballer on her battle with mental illness. And why the dry winter could mean we're heading for a summer drought.
From Hartlepool, this is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening from Hartlepool, a town that will be the setting for a fierce general election battle, an election that's now just 1 month away. Today, campaigning got into full swing with the parties clashing over immigration and the NHS. Theresa May said the Conservatives would keep their target of bringing net migration down to the tens of thousands, but she wouldn't say when. Jeremy Corbyn, meanwhile, said Labour would scrap car park charging at hospitals in England and ban some junk food TV adverts. Lib Dem leader Tim Farron took his election battle bus to Scotland. Our correspondents are following the three parties through their campaigns. We'll have the latest live on Labour and the Lib Dems in a moment. But first, Emily Morgan reports on the Conservatives and their immigration row.
Give her a very warm welcome. Prime Minister.
It is 2 years to the day since David Cameron unexpectedly won a Conservative majority. Now Theresa May wants her own mandate, and a big one at that. So today she rallied the troops in northwest London.
We must leave no stone unturned, no street unwalked down, no door unknocked on.
But it was immigration we wanted to talk about. Would she keep the commitment to reduce migration to the tens of thousands in her own manifesto?
We do want to bring net migration down to sustainable levels. We believe that is the tens of thousands. And of course, once we leave the European Union, we will have the opportunity to ensure that we have control of our borders here in the UK.
A sign then the target isn't going anywhere. Mrs May spent the afternoon at an aviation academy in Norwich. It's an area where migrant workers help keep the local economy ticking. Andy Allen farms 200 acres of asparagus. 95% of his farm workers are from the EU. Any curb in numbers would affect his livelihood.
For our industry, it will be completely crippling. We're relying on migrant workers seasonally to pick asparagus on this farm. Without them, there isn't enough supply of local labour.
So you would go out of business if she achieved that aim?
Oh, definitely. And that's not just me, that's the whole fruit and veg industry, frankly.
Will she, though, ever achieve her goal? She failed to do so for 6 years as Home Secretary. Later she was challenged on when it will happen.
What I've learnt over the years, though, as Home Secretary, is that there is no single answer that suddenly delivers the figures. You have to keep working at this.
And that is her aim. It's just the voters she now needs to convince.
And I suppose the question tonight is why continue to commit to reducing the numbers to the tens of thousands when it hasn't been possible in the past? Part of the answer is because we are actually leaving the EU. In theory, it should be easier to control the numbers of migrants coming from the EU. The other part of the answer is political. Theresa May wants to win votes from the UKIP voters, from Brexiteer voters, and of course she has for many years been looking at ways to reduce the numbers herself. So she is fundamentally committed to this pledge.
Emily Morgan in Norwich, thank you. The Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, spent the day focusing on the NHS and health. He started by meeting nurses and said Labour would bring back bursary schemes and axe car park charges in England's hospitals. But he was less clear on exactly how it would be funded. Rachel Younger is following the Labour campaign and sent this report.
Morning. Morning. Who's the quiet one?
Acknowledging the resuscitation dummy in the room was a brave move from a leader who so far has singularly failed to revive Labour's hopes. But he's speaking the language of NHS staff on pay, dropping hospital parking charges and student nurse funding.
You're the last in nurse bursary. Well, I hope you're not the last, because we're going to bring it back.
Hello. It's not surprising Corbyn wants to talk about the cash-starved NHS, but he's less keen to put an overall total on how much his raft of health policies will cost.
How much more money are you willing to give the NHS above inflation over the course of the next Parliament?
The total money will be revealed in the manifesto. It will come out shortly. The immediate proposal today is on car parking charges, which will cost 162 million in England.
But with respect, that is peanuts, isn't it? The total that
will
raise
amount,
will keep the NHS going for about 12 hours.
It means an awful lot to staff.
Yeah, I agree.
And staff who've had a pay freeze
I
for 7
agree.
years.
Can you guarantee that this time round there will be a figure in the Labour Party manifesto on how much extra money the
I can
NHS
guarantee
will get?
we will properly fund the National Health Service.
But there will be a figure.
There will be clear figures there on what we're going to do for our National Health Service.
Corbyn's determination to make himself rather more publicly accessible than his Tory counterpart may lead to a banana skin or two.
Strong and stable bananas. Strong and stable bananas.
But food was firmly on the policy menu today.
We would stop the intensive advertising of unhealthy fast foods on television aimed at our children, not because we're killjoys, because the very opposite.
And this was a visibly relaxed leader.
Smile now.
But to keep smiles like this in place, Corbyn will need to ensure the NHS and its woes under the Tories remain right at the forefront of voters' minds.
Well, I think it was remarkable today just how much access there was to Jeremy Corbyn. His two main events were open not just to his supporters but to the public. And as you saw, he was willing to stop and take questions. I think it's clear that his team are determined to capitalise on how tightly controlled access to his counterpart in the Tories has been. But don't expect it to go too far. He said there wouldn't be any sign of his wife Laura on the campaign trail, telling me he was determined to keep a space private for his family. But I think we did see a little more of his personality today.
Rachel Younger in Leamington Spa, thank you. The Lib Dem leader Tim Farron boarded his election battle bus for Scotland, targeting some of the 10 seats his party lost in the last election. He said there would be no deals with other parties, but that was undermined by a recording of former Business Secretary Vince Cable. From the Lib Dem campaign, here's Emma Murphy.
It's called the Battle Bus, and today the Liberal Democrats officially launched their election campaign, taking the fight to Scotland. They used to have 11 MPs here. Now there's just one, and they're keen to claw back lost seats. With ousted former MPs seeking re-election, it was to the more distant past that the leader turned to warn of the perils of a Tory landslide.
And I just want you to imagine what it will mean for you, for your family, for your hospital, for your school, if on the 9th of June you wake up with a Conservative majority bigger than the ones that Margaret Thatcher had in the 1980s.
On the streets of St Andrews, Tim Farron was out spreading the Lib Dem promise of no pacts, no deals and no coalitions.
The sun shines on the righteous.
Unfortunately, whilst the sun may have shone on the leader, the spotlight was on Vince Cable, alluding to a spot of tactical voting, having got on well with a Labour candidate.
I would find it to vote against something like that, and I would hope that our people around the country are discriminated and think in that kind of constructive way.
It's absolutely right that politicians of all political parties actually spend time treating each other like human beings, not like different members of different isolated tribes. But it's also important that we as a party are very clear in our message, which is that there will be no pacts, no deals, no coalition.
That may be the message, but it's all rather awkward when seeking to avoid Tory claims that a vote for the Lib Dems would potentially lead to a coalition of chaos with Labour. And I can tell you there was a fair bit of eye-rolling on the bus when it became clear what Vince Cable had been recorded saying. Just for now, though, Tim Farron has arrived at this school in Edinburgh. He'll be going back out onto the stage to get the message across once more that people who vote for the Liberal Democrats are voting only for them and not for any kind of coalition.
Emma Murphy in Edinburgh, thank you. UKIP also entered the immigration debate today, saying it will cut net migration to zero with a one-in, one-out policy. Party leader Paul Nuttall says numbers arriving in the UK could be halved and seasonal work could be offered to British students rather than European workers. And Nicola Sturgeon kicked off the SNP campaign this week by pulling pints in Perth. She tells supporters that Brexit gave voters a clear choice between Tory MPs who would rubber-stamp Theresa May's hard Brexit and the SNP who would put Scotland first. Now, the fight for power in seats like this town, Hartlepool, will decide who wins the general election. It's been held by Labour since the constituency was created in 1974, but that hold is crumbling. Last time UKIP finished second and it voted 69.5% in favour of Brexit. That was one of the highest levels in the UK. Another sign of the challenges ahead for Labour came just last week when a Conservative was voted in as the first Tees Valley mayor. No surprise then that the Tories have made this a major target seat. So, with so much at stake, our correspondent Martin Geisler heard what matters to voters here.
Hartlepool's a town with a strong sense of community, a place where people know their neighbours and social clubs still thrive. But some of the old traditions here are changing. A Labour stronghold for generations, that vote is no longer guaranteed. You're a Labour man who voted UKIP and now you're going Tory.
Yeah.
Are you surprised at yourself?
No, I'm just voting the way I feel we need to go, because I don't think that we'll have the strength if we go in any other direction.
Who do you trust more with the Brexit negotiations?
Theresa May, and I'm a Labour man.
Will she get your vote?
I think so.
Because of that?
Yeah.
There seems little real love for any party here. Last week's mayoral elections attracted a turnout of just 17%. A decade of cuts and austerity have done little to draw first-time voters like Caitlin Wood towards politics.
What would you say to the party leaders with a month to go?
If you're going to make promises, keep them. Just as simple as that. Don't say things and then take them away when you get elected. It's just no point.
Do you trust politicians?
No.
None of them?
No.
This town hasn't heard the thrum of heavy industry for a long time, but a few of the yards are still working. They used to build oil rigs here. Now they're paid to take them apart. Decommissioning the Brent Delta platform has created work for a lucky few, like apprentice Jack Anderson. But with unemployment double the national average, the Tories' northern powerhouse feels a long way away.
For a lot of people around this area, I think travelling will be the only option to get a good career and obviously a good income.
Depressing that, isn't it, when your heart's still at home?
Absolutely, yeah. People are going to have to leave families, friends behind to go away and earn a decent living. I think it's tragic, really.
Like so much of the northeast, this town is fiercely proud of its past, but uncertain, if not apprehensive, of its future. Martin Geisler, ITV News, Hartlepool.
The view there from Hartlepool will still to come on the ITV Evening News, from the battle for votes in the UK to the fallout from the French presidential election. And after the driest winter in a decade, the farmers facing ruined crops. Those stories and more after the break. Join me then. Again, welcome back to Hartlepool, where I'm on the campaign trail ahead of the general election. Now, France, of course, has just completed its presidential elections with Emmanuel Macron convincingly beating the far-right's Marine Le Pen. He's firmly pro-EU, and there are concerns that he could make Brexit difficult. But the woman tipped to be his new Prime Minister told ITV News that they'll play straight with Britain. From Paris, here's our Europe editor, James Mays.
His first morning as President-elect, Emmanuel Macron stands alongside his outgoing predecessor, François Hollande, in a VE Day tribute to France's war dead. It was exactly 5 years ago that Hollande was preparing to take office amid a similar wave of enthusiasm. That has ended in failure and recrimination. Macron knows how easy it could be for the same thing to happen to him.
Vive la République! Vive la France!
Political honeymoons can be short-lived here. especially when you have no majority in Parliament. The front pages won't always be as kind or as unanimous as they were this morning, which is why he's putting a renewed partnership with Germany and the revival of Europe at the top of his agenda. Anne-Marie Idrak is among the favourites to be his first Prime Minister.
I think that France is back, and when France is back, Europe is back.
What does this mean for Brexit? What is his attitude going to be?
I don't think it is a big change for Brexit, because I know that as I am, he's sad of what the British people decided, but we are respectful. The idea is not to punish. The idea is just to have the implementation of what was written in the treaties. That's all.
As for his defeated opponent, Marine Le Pen, this may just be the end of the road. She joined party workers on the dance floor soon after conceding defeat last night. But it was her bad moves during a lacklustre and clumsy campaign that led to her performing much worse than many, including the pollsters, had expected. In fact, 43% of those who voted for Macron say they only did so to keep her out of office. That may well have worked, but it doesn't display unqualified enthusiasm for him. And on the streets of Paris this afternoon, anti-capitalist protesters gave an early taste of some of the headwinds Mr. Macron may face. This was small, certainly, but a serious push for economic and labour reforms could provoke a lot more of it. James Mates, ITV News, Paris.
Here, a 2-year-old girl is in a serious condition in hospital after she was mauled by a pack of dogs in a garden where she was playing. Police in Liverpool have charged a 35-year-old man over the attack. They say the dogs are not banned breeds. The numbers of professional footballers seeking help for mental health issues has dramatically increased. ITV News has learned that more have also come forward following the sectioning of the Everton star Aaron Lennon last week. Former England player Kelly Smith has battled her own demons, and as our sports editor Steve Scott reports, she's now raising awareness about mental health.
As a footballer, Kelly Smith's record is unparalleled, but her iconic status was no protection, first to alcohol and then overwhelming depression. So much so, she came close to ending it all.
I was very, very low, to the point where I had suicidal thoughts because I didn't know what way to turn. And, you know, having that bottle and thinking I could just swallow these and drink it with the vodka and then I wouldn't wake up and my pain would be gone.
In the football world, she is far from alone. Last year, 160 current and retired players asked the PFA for help with mental health issues. That figure has increased dramatically, with 178 coming forward already this year. 11 of those since last week, following publicity around Aaron Lennon.
I really struggled to cope with the loss of football because I identified as Kelly Smith the footballer. I think if I can help other people along the way, because there are so many other athletes or general people that go through these same things, that it's okay to talk about it if it can help other people.
Kelly Smith's story proves again fame and success are no barriers to mental illness. But if she hadn't reached for help, it is also a story that could have ended very differently. Steve Scott, ITV News.
There are fears there could be a widespread drought across the UK this summer. April saw less than half its usual amount of rain, and it followed the driest winter for 20 years, when our farmers are warning that crops could fail, as Rupert Evelyn reports.
The riverbed has run dry in Cumbria, and this, the River Derwent, is supposedly one of the wettest places in the country. In Somerset, they should have a carpet of green. But the spring barley is struggling to take hold, and the clay soil it sits in is so dry that it's almost impenetrable to the young crop. These fields are more used to flooding, but farmer James Winslade faces the other extreme if conditions don't improve.
Arable farmers, grass farmers, dairy farmers, doesn't really make any difference. They're all worried. They've cut grass earlier than they normally would have done, and we haven't had the rain to get the grass and the crops growing back.
Last month, England saw just over a third of its normal rainfall. It comes off the back of the driest winter in more than 20 years. The southeast has been worst affected, but the Met Office say many other areas in the UK have seen rainfall levels far below average. You'd have little idea of any problem judging by this reservoir up on Exmoor. And yet, as we head into what ought to be the driest months, it's far from ideal. On the surface, everything here at Wimbleby Lake looks fine. But it's actually about 90% full, which is already much lower than it was in 1995, which was a drought year. Water, or lack of it, is an issue almost everywhere.
As you go east from here, I think many of my farming colleagues in East Anglia, in the southeast, are seeing excessively dry conditions.
Farming is unpredictable, but with rain forecasts, there's a possibility at least that these damaged crops may be about to get help. Rupert Evelyn, ITV News, Somerset.
Well, back to our main story, and we are here in Hartlepool tonight, counting down to the general election. And I'm joined by our correspondent, Martin Geisler. Martin, you spent the last couple of days in the area. What's your overriding feeling of what people are thinking here?
Well, I sensed a lot of apathy, Mary, I have to say. I didn't meet anyone who's racing towards this election with a wild-eyed sense of enthusiasm. In fact, you tell people you want to speak to them about politics, they're more likely to roll their eyes. But that's not exclusive to Hartlepool, clearly. I think a lot of our viewers will empathise with that. What I did find interesting was speaking to people who've changed the habit of a lifetime when it comes to casting their vote. I didn't sense any real heavy-heartedness about it. I just got the sense that people think, you know, the world's changing, politics is changing, everything's up for grabs. We're going to be on the road for the next month, dropping into towns like this, listening to people, hearing what they think. And I think, from Hartlepool certainly, politicians of all parties are going to have to work hard to earn votes in this election. And I think that's pretty much exactly as it should be.
To actually encourage people to turn out at all.
Absolutely, a lot's up for grabs.
Martin, thank you very much indeed. And that is all for now from Hartlepool. Over the next 5 weeks, I'm going to be travelling right across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. In the meantime, Tom Bradby is in the studio with an extended news at 10 tonight. But from me and all the team here in Hartlepool, have a great evening. Bye-bye.